We made it to the very last 4 letters of the alphabet. Okay, so we have W next. And W is going to be exactly the same as the letter U, where we had entrance stroke and then 2 underturns, and then we're going to finish with that shape that we had in the V, so that smaller underturn. So here we have the same entrance stroke. Then for both the U shapes we go down and then back up. Same here, down and back up. So there will be 3 shades. 1, 2, 3. And again, you can think of this part as either being just another underturned stroke that is offset, or you can think of it as being a shade on the inside with an exit stroke on the outside. I'm just going to draw it as one shape. And then I'll go back in and add shades on the downstrokes on the inside of this shape. So on the inside section of the underturn. Same with here, and then make sure that that's closed off. So again, we have 2 underturns and then another underturn, shading on the inside. I'm going to show you 2 ways to write the letter X. The first way is by doing that compound curve shape that we make, except we're going to elongate it a little bit, like this. So that will be the first part of the X, and then we'll put a crossbar through it. And we're going to shade, so here we go up, down, up. And then this is going to be a thin line, so I'm just going to write it as going up, but you can make it up or down, and I'll show you that in a second. So here we just have this shade going downward. And same concept with the compound curve. If you want to leave the gap, then you need to add some shading on the left and some shading on the right, but you don't want to have the line in the middle, so you can pick a path to follow. You can either make this part a little narrower and then add the shade on the right, or come over and go to the right of this line and then add some shading on the left. So I chose to go make this a little wide and then add some shading on the left. And then we'll come in with a crossbar. So this part you can make going in the downward direction or upward, but you're not going to add any thickness to it. So basically we're making this compound curve shape a little bit elongated, filling it in, and then you can make these straight or you can give them a little bit of a wave if you want. And that's one way to make it. Another way is by making the compound curve shape and then making this line thick. And I wouldn't recommend this if you want to leave the gap, because here we're going to make all of these thin even though we're going down. Here we're going to keep it thin, and then for this line we're going to make this one thick. So that would look like this, and then we'll make this one thick. And you can see why I wouldn't recommend doing this way if you want to leave this gap, but if you're filling it in, then it doesn't matter. Okay, so whichever one you choose, you just want to make sure one of the lines is thick and then the line crossing it is thin. we have our baseline, our header line, and our descender for the letter Y. Now the Y is going to start with the compound curve, and then there's a descending stem loop, and then an exit stroke. So up, down, up. The descending stem loop, we go down and back up, and then up for the exit stroke. So we'll have a shade on the compound curve, remembering if you want to make a gap to make it wider on one side, and then we'll have the descending stem loop, which you can shade on the outside. So start with compound curve, add the shade there, and then make the loop of the Y, and stop right here, don't keep going through, so that you can add your shade on the outside, and then finish with this last piece. Again, if you're planning on filling it in, you could just make this an even compound curve, add a little bit on the left, add a little bit on the right, and then fill it in. So for making this shade on the outside, you want to make sure that you come down and then start curving inward when you get towards the bottom. But when we make the ascending stem loop, like in the letter B or H, the line that we add is straight. But for the descending stem loop, the line that you add for the shade on the outside has to curve in a little bit at the end. Okay. You ready for the last letter? Baseline, header line, and descender. I'm going to show you two ways. And the first way starts with this overturn shape, and then it actually has a little bit of a loop at the end. And then we come down and make that descending stem loop, except it's more of a teardrop shape rather than straight down. Finish with an exit stroke. So up, down, and then down, up, up. Of course, by now, or on the last letter, you know how to fill in the shades. Start with this shape, come around and make a little loop, and then we'll make this loop and finish off with an exit stroke. Now here you can add the shade on the inside and in the loop. If it looks like you made the loop too narrow or this part too narrow, you can always, if you're coloring it in, you can always adjust the curvature by adding more shade to one side. Like if I wanted this to come out more, I could just add the shade on the outside instead of the inside. Okay, the very last way to make the last letter. Baseline, header line, and descender. Now this way is going to start like the R and the S, where we're going to come up and make a little loop, and then I'm going to continue it like this. And then we're going to have a little curved shape here, come down with that same descending stem loop shape, and then finish with an exit stroke. So here we're going up, down, and this is kind of like to the side and back up. Here we're going down, down, up, up. So we'll add a shade here, and here. And then same with this part, we can compare it to the R and the S, where you can either add a shade on the outside or fill in the loop, or you can leave the loop empty. Okay, so for this downstroke, I'm going to add some shading, and I'm just going to add it on the outside. You could add it on the inside if you wanted, whichever makes it look more balanced. And then same with that loop. So putting it all together, start at the baseline, come up above the header line, loop around, down and back up. So this kind of looks complicated, but really if you think about it as being the same beginning as the R or the S, where you just come up and make a little loop, and then you do want to come down and back up. In the R you do not do this, you do not come back up, but in the Z you can do that. Make a little line. Here I didn't make a loop, but if you want to make a little loop there you could. And then finish with the descending stem loop. Add some shade right here. If you make a small loop right here, you don't fill it in. And then you can add some shading on the bottom loop. And then up here, usually I fill it in. Okay, so that's the last letter. So again, W is pretty similar to U. There's two ways to write the X. And then we have Y and two ways to write Z.